What's up, guys? It's Justin Henry with J Hen Fantasy. And if you're looking for more insight and information than I have here on this YouTube page, make sure y'all head over to jhenfantasy.com. Check out my weekly note sheet, rankings, articles, bets, and a whole lot more. I promise y'all, if you're trying to win your league, that's the spot to be. Make sure y'all sub to the page while you're here, too. All right, let's start off with Dallas and Philadelphia. And obviously, the very first game of the year. This should be exciting to watch. A little bit of a point projection here, 47 and a half. Lets us know it's going to be a high scoring total. And then 8.5 point favorites there for Philly. So I'll go over the quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and tight ends for both teams. And let's start on the Dallas side of things here. Obviously, for Dak Prescott, it's going to be a new look offense when you got George Pickens here. A change in the coaching range as well. We're going to see some things out of this team. And, obviously with Dak, we know he's a locked in quarterback one typically, but he's coming off that injury that he had last year. So it remains to be seen what he looks like, right? Is there any kind of rust? I wouldn't expect that. But going up against this Philadelphia defense, which is stout, we all know this Philadelphia defense, man, and what it is coming off of their Super Bowl win. Things are going to be difficult for this Dallas offense, but I think Dak is safe as like a high-end QB2. He'll have some QB1 appeal, especially just because you guys see it. The point total is a little higher there, sitting at 47 and a half. And then when it goes to the passing game, right, you start talking about CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Both of these receivers are going to be heavily featured all year long. And when you really think about like CeeDee Lamb and what he's trying to do, obviously he had himself a down year last year, dealt with injury towards the end of last year, and didn't have his starting quarterback for a good majority of the year. So in this matchup, obviously, this team is full of pass rushers. It's going to be harder for Dak to get the ball off effectively. This defensive line is great, so the run game isn't going to be there. What do? You go to the short passing game, and adding a George Pickens this offseason allows CeeDee Lamb to kind of move around the formation a little bit. Obviously, it will be featured out of the slot. But I can expect CeeDee Lamb to have a really nice game, even though this matchup is a little bit tougher than it appears on the surface. Last year, the Eagles were top 7 against receivers. But I think for CeeDee Lamb, he's had success with this matchup in the past, and I'd expect that to continue, especially in the short passing game. Now, as far as George Pickens, a new piece on this offense for the Dallas Cowboys, obviously is a superstar in his own right. He hasn't quite hit that yet for our fantasy teams. He's been more of this wide receiver 3-ish, kind of a boom or bust play for us at the wide receiver 3 spot. And I think he stays there for this game, specifically this matchup with the Eagles, who do tend to limit the big plays offensively for other teams. So when I think George Pickens, I kind of think, okay, maybe we'll see a little bit more later. But this total for me lets me know there's going to be potential points on the board. So it wouldn't shock me, George Pickens, if he has a deep play or if he has a touchdown. I think he's more of a boom or bust wide receiver 3 than like the wide receiver 2 you may have had to draft him as this offseason in your drafts. As far as receivers, if I'm looking for like other sleeper receivers in this offense, there's been a little bit of commotion about Kevontae Turpin and what his role can look like. They've talked about using him in the slot, getting him in the reverse game. Obviously not somebody I'm looking to have on rosters at this point, just a name to note, because if he does take on a little bit bigger role, if they do use him in the backfield or in the slot, we know he can take one touch to the house. That's what he does as a kick returner. And there's just been a little bit of offseason chatter about him being a little bit more involved. So if I had to think of another piece in this offense, it wouldn't be, Kevontae Turpin is the one I'm like looking at. He's the one I'm thinking, okay, if there's a leap to be made, maybe he's a little bit more involved in like this Deebo Samuel type role. Maybe we see something kind of creative with him. And I'll say this, I don't know that we get that out of him, but it wouldn't be shocking to see him be on the field a little bit more than we're used to. And then as far as the ground game goes, we'll have a mixed bag here. Javonte Williams is going to be the starter. He's the nominal starter, right? He's the one that we know is going to start the season with the most carries. But what does that look like moving forward, and how long of a leash does he have? Miles Sanders is also a good running back in his own right. And going up against this Philly defensive line, which was top 2 against running backs last year, it's going to be tough sledding for Javonte Williams again to get things going this year. So when I think of Javonte Williams, I'm kind of erring on the side of caution. I would probably leave him on benches. At best, really a flex play for me this week, unless he's catching a ton of passes or doing something different than we've seen over the years. I kind of think we know who Javonte Williams is, and that's even with the shorter leash than he's had in the past. As far as Miles Sanders, keep an eye on him. If the touches are similar to Javonte, wouldn't be surprising to see if Javonte falters at all. Miles having a chance at starting here. And then Jaden Blue's had a lot of hype, obviously a lot of speed out that backfield, kind of a pass catcher potentially as well. Could be Darren Sproles-esque for this team. I think that there's a little bit of value there with Jaden Blue as the season goes on. If you have him on your bench, obviously you're not starting him. Hopefully you're not starting him, but there's a chance that he has some value later down the year. Let's see how it plays out over the first couple weeks before putting him in the starting lineups. And as far as Jake Ferguson, obviously he is a tight end 2 that we've had on our teams, pretty much a touchdown dependent tight end 2. And if they're going to move the ball against this Philly defense, it's going to be tough sledding for Jake Ferguson as well. So I think his best bet at fantasy production is going to be with the touchdown. More reminiscent of what it was 2 years ago for him. And I think this is just a tough overall matchup with this Philly defense in general. And then as far as the Philly side goes, it's going to be a lot lighter for this Philly offense, knowing that Micah Parsons is in Green Bay. But Jalen Hurts going up against Dallas was struggled last year, especially with Trayvon Diggs out. He is now returned, and we yet to see what he looks like coming off of his injury. But we know this Dallas secondary is good, and it just remains to be seen. Was Micah Parsons the reason why this defense looked the way it did over the years? So I think Jalen Hurts obviously in a plus matchup here this week. This was the best matchup for quarterbacks last season. Dallas Cowboys were. And unfortunately, his defense might be bad yet again. So obviously fire up Jalen Hurts, one of my favorite quarterback plays of the week. And then these receivers as well. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Dallas was a bottom 10 team against wide receivers last year. So a hell of a lot of opportunity for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith this game. And I've talked a lot this offseason about how A.J. Brown is set for a rebound. There's been a lot of chatter from him about wanting to prove that he's the best in the league. Mano a mano against CeeDee Lamb, this could be a good spot for him to prove that game one. If I was looking for a touchdown candidate, I'd like to think A.J. Brown scores a touchdown this week. So especially with the point total here, should be a nice Philly type of win, especially with this Dallas defense lacking. The point total's kind of already started, the spread at least has already started to increase. So I like A.J. Brown as a high-end wide receiver 1. I like Devontae Smith. He's kind of a boomer bust wide receiver 2. If he gets the splash play, kind of reminds me a little bit of what George Pickens is. I do think he has a little bit more volume. Both of these receivers coming off of injuries heading into the regular season. So just something to note. They might be a little bit cautious with them if this game gets out of hand or in the fourth quarter. They might limit their reps. But A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, both fire-ups for me, in my opinion. Obviously, you're starting Saquon Barkley. Decent matchup for him. The Cowboys did get Kenny Clark, who is pretty good against the run. But Saquon Barkley, they use him in the passing game as well. I want to see what the touches look like because last year they rode Saquon to the wheels fell off in a good way, and they didn't fall off. They went straight to the Super Bowl. But I'm curious to see what they do with Saquon Barkley, with A.J. Dillon, with Will Shipley, if this thing is more balanced, not balanced because Saquon's the guy, but a little bit more balanced than we're thinking with, working in Will Shipley and A.J. Dillon a little bit more than we think initially. So I think Saquon is still obviously top 3 running back in a good matchup for him. He should be able to find the end zone as well this week. But I want to see how they utilize him. They're using him a little bit more in the passing game, which has been rumored out of Philly. And then as far as Dallas Goedert, this is another player the Eagles have to get on track. Dallas was a little tougher against tight ends last year, top 10 against the position last year. But I do think Dallas Goedert is a piece that the Eagles have to get going, and they might lean on a little bit more. So I'm kind of excited just overall about this Eagles passing game. And Dallas Goedert, for me, is a high-end tight end, too, in this matchup. So nothing crazy here. I do want to see it with Dallas Goedert. He's been a tight end 1 in the past for our teams. I kind of want to see him play the part of tight end 1 before we start trusting him again in that circles. He's on the back end tight end 1, high end tight end 2 radar for me this week. So overall, I'm expecting a little bit more out of this Philly passing game than we typically see. And plus options for Eagles players across the board. In this matchup, I do think Philly gets the upper hand. I do expect Philly to win this game, but shootout. I don't know if shootout's on deck, but there's plenty of points available in this matchup.